Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the biggest enemies of recovery. Powerful topic, incredible topic, not a very fun topic to deal with. But we're going to be diving into the topic of shame. And I know we've already talked a little bit about shame, but the issue is that almost always addiction and shame are tied together in a tangled ball. And addiction doesn't just trap our body and our brain, it traps our heart with shame. And so, a big quote, maybe you should put on your mirror or somewhere special, I don't know, but is that guilt says, I did something wrong. Oops, I was wrong. Shame says, I am something wrong. Another way to put it is guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. It's really, a big piece of it is identity issue, right? And I think that's an interesting question to ask yourself is, what did your parents say when you made a mistake, when you spilled your milk? Was it, oh, buddy, go grab a towel. It's okay. Just grab a towel real quick. Let's clean it up. Shh. You made a mistake. No big deal, right? That's one possibility. Or was it, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're such a, like, bleep, 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 bloop, right? And I know many of us have been called many things that weren't good. Or maybe there was not something said there, but there was a deeper message by what our parents did. Maybe it was a sneer or I can't stand you kind of a feeling that we got and that we internalized, so that we begin to really kind of despise ourselves. Because oftentimes the way our parents and the people, our caregivers, the way they treated us, we take on and then treat ourselves. We take on the message they sent to us. And maybe it was just one time that we received a message, and we take that and we internalize it and we magnify it. What does the internal part of your heart say to you when you make a mistake, when you say something wrong to your kids, your wife, your person at work, when you make a mistake on the road, you're driving down the road, and maybe you do kind of cut somebody off, and what do you say to yourself? Is it, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm such an idiot, or is it, and that would be an indication that there's some shame there, right? Or is it, oh, oops, sorry, I made a mistake, right? And obviously, we have to be responsible for our lives, and not everything can just be a, oops, sorry, made a mistake. But everything can be fixed, typically, right? We can repair. And, I think it is important to recognize, guilt has a certain weight to it, right? We go, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, and now I'm going to change. And there's a lot of hope in guilt, right? When we feel guilty, we shift what we've done and make a better choice, right? When we feel shameful, the weight is far greater. And there's kind of this sense of, I can never change. I can never, because I just am horrible. I'm just bad. I'm just fill in the blank, right? And so I'm curious, in your groups this week, talk a little bit about how has shame impacted you? Do you feel like you brought any shame from childhood into adulthood, into addiction? Is your shame connected to your addiction? And I can almost guarantee it probably is, because usually when we feel bad, kind of like we talked about last time, we feel bad, so therefore we try to medicate that away and we do our addiction. We look at porn, we masturbate, and then we feel horrible about ourselves, right? And the voice in our head goes, I'm never going to do this again. We kind of commit to never do it again. But then more pain and frustration begins to rise, and we begin to feel the shame and go, gosh, I'm such a whatever, and I'm never going to be good enough. And so, forget about it. Let's just do it again. And so then we go, and that shame cycle just keeps rolling. And so that's why we want to talk about it, because by bringing it into the light, it's powerful. So acting out creates more shame. I'm weak. I'm disgusting. I'll never change. Shame fuels more acting out, and the loop continues. So I do want to talk about the exponential growth of shame, and I think for most of us, shame has grown. It may have started small, but it continues to grow. And I think about, whatever we have in our life is a little bit like this jar, right? In this jar, I've got a little bit of milk and tea and some, some chia seeds. And, but whatever we have in here, maybe it's good, maybe it's not so good, right? We can acknowledge, it's not that great, right? But if we put the lid on it and we cover it up, we say, okay, this is bad, this is no good. And now we're going to put it into some secrecy, right? We're going to cover it up, let it live in the dark, right? And how often do we do that with our shame? We don't want anybody to know. Oh, shh, don't tell anybody. Keep it quiet. If I tell somebody, what are they going to think? Oh my gosh. If I tell somebody I had that thought or that I did this thing, oh my gosh. And hiding the shame actually becomes heavier than the shame itself. Because now I've got this weighted blanket on here and I'm going, oh my gosh, this is a heavy load to be carrying around. What happens to the badness that's inside my jar? Well, it's probably after a day or two or a month or two, it's going to start to fester. It's going to start to stink. It's going to start to rot. And it's going to still be impacting my life. People are going to shake it and it's going to go, whoo! Why did that guy throw such a fit about such a small thing? Why is that dude acting out so much? And it's related to this jar of shame that I won't uncover. And then oftentimes we throw a label on it. And that's really what, and I wrote on here, you probably can't see it, but it says failure. And that's what shame needs to grow exponentially is secrecy, silence, and judgment. Secrecy, we put it, we cover it up, we hide it, we hide what we've done. If we're guilty of something, cutting somebody off, if I hide it, don't tell anybody about it, then it has power over me. And I cover it up and it grows and it festers in my heart. And pretty soon I do need to medicate it. And then, if we say it out loud, if we talk about it and we begin to, I go home and I tell somebody, hey, you know what? I cut off a dude today and it was kind of scary and I probably shouldn't have done that. I felt really bad. Wow. All of a sudden it releases the power. And the other piece of it is the judgment. And I put this label on here because oftentimes we are labeled as addicts, right? We are labeled as the bad boy, the bad person, the whatever, right? And I want us to recognize that the fear of others and the fear of their rejection confirms our shame. And oftentimes we're our worst critics. We're the ones that bring the judgment, right? I'm such a blah, 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 right? What are the words that you say about yourself? Get out your paper, write it down. What are the words of judgment and contempt that often come to you? Maybe they don't come out of your mouth, but they at least come to your mind. See if you can write down 4 or 5, maybe 10 different words, things that you think, things that you say about yourself when something bad happens. You make a mistake in traffic, when you spill the milk, when you say something you shouldn't have to your wife, to your boss, to your kids, to the people in your life. What is the judgment that you bring to yourself? I'm disgusting. I'm worthless. I'm hopeless. I'm such a loser. Oh, I'm never going to win, right? What are those judgments that you bring? And so sometimes judgments from our church or our family intensify it, right? What do they say about us? That guy can never dress himself. I don't know. But when we want to break the power of shame, there's a few things we've got to do. Shame attacks our identity. It's I am bad, right? It's not just behavior. It's not just I did something wrong, but it becomes I am wrong. And so it kills hope. Shame is a hope thief and a hope killer. There's no hope if I am bad to the bone. I'm bad to the core. But in recovery, we can shift that script. And while we're in recovery, most of our relapses are actually not fueled by desire. They're fueled by shame. And so next time you feel that temptation rising up inside of you, I want you to look around inside of your heart and see, is there any shame going on here? What do I feel ashamed of? What do I feel afraid to say? Where do I feel judged? Where do I feel like I've got to hold secret? In recovery, most relapses are fueled not by desire, but by shame. And so when you're feeling that, take a look back a little bit, look around inside of your heart and say, what am I feeling ashamed of? What am I feeling afraid to talk about? What am I feeling? And begin to break that cycle of shame. It's by asking those questions, by noticing shame, by calling it out. So how do we break the shame? Well, first of all, is to notice it and recognize the enemy is our accuser. He's the one that wants to wrap us up in our shame. Because if he's got us wrapped up in our shame, he knows he can wrap us up in our addiction. And if he's got us wrapped up in our addiction, he doesn't have to worry about us because we're not going to do anything against his kingdom. He's got us wrapped up. So his strategy is shame. But Jesus doesn't put shame upon us. He says, yes, you have been guilty and my blood has cleansed you and you are mine and you are beloved and you are forgiven. And so beginning to grab a hold of that and reach for that and go, heck no, I'm not a piece of crap. I am Christ's beloved is massive in the progress of breaking that shame. The antidotes for shame are also doing the opposite, taking off the labels, taking off the noticing, okay, I've just been called failure. I've just been called piece of crap. I've just been called whatever. And we take that and we throw that away. And then we come out of secrecy. We begin to pull off the veil that covers our badness, the things that are covering us up. We don't have to tell everybody what's going on in our lives, but we do have to tell safe people. And our brothers in recovery and our recovery groups are absolutely essential to that process. We bring it into the light and it breaks its power. The opposite of secrecy is confession and transparency. How do we bring it out into the light? Saying it out loud in safe spaces kills shame. Being able to say, you know what? I struggle with addiction. And I'm an addict, but I'm beloved. Whoa, that's powerful. To just be able to say that, to be able to talk to somebody about, you know what? I'm feeling really tempted today. Feeling like I really want my addiction. I really want to use. Just talking about it with somebody can lay that burden down and bring you out of that shame cycle. Saying it out loud in safe spaces kills shame and its exaggerations. Finding that group, that sponsor, and that trusted friend also is important. It helps you to have a place to share that. Coming against the judgment of shame. Remember, there was three things: secrecy, silence, and judgment. The judgment piece is the opposite of judgment is finding grace, having grace for ourselves, looking at ourselves and going, hey, you know what? I've made mistakes and that's okay. I'm human and I'm learning and I'm growing and I can pull up the jar and look at it and go, whoa, yeah, there's some stuff that needs some work in there. And I can work on it. There's a lot of hope in acknowledging that, isn't there? And so grace reminds us that we are not defined by our worst choices. We're defined by Christ and his love for us. And so, that grace and also empathy helps to kill shame. When a guy shares, somebody else shares, like, man, this is what I did. This is what I thought. This is what I said. And we come alongside and we go, you know what? I've been there too. That also helps to kill shame in both of us. We're not defined by our worst choices, and having people to share with is huge. So the biggest piece, when we're when we're in that is, remember, take the lid off, take it out of the secrecy, remove the cloth, peel off the failure label, and you know that freedom comes as shame is dismantled. So finally, I just want to recap. So shame grows in secrecy, silence, and judgment, but recovery grows in confession, honesty, and grace. This week, don't let shame grow in your heart. Share one of your struggles. What are some of the things that maybe you have never shared with somebody? Maybe it's time to kind of pull some of those things out, as you're working your recovery journey, there's an opportunity to begin to share some of those things. If you're doing a 12-step program, highly recommend that. And step 4 in your 12-step is to begin to take that personal inventory. Maybe I'm not ready to share it with somebody today, but I'm going to write it down. And I'm going to begin to put that pen to paper and write down some of the things that I really feel ashamed about, and take that next step. So, and begin to be honest about yourself. Well, honest with yourself about who you are, and that you are beloved, and that maybe those labels that have been put on you aren't accurate. They're not truthful. They're not the truest truth of who you are. Shame says you're unworthy of love, and grace says you already belong. And so that's kind of the idea behind shame and that cycle of shame and addiction. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for you to see shame for what it is. Talk about it in your groups. Bring up the topic of shame. Let's chat about it, because it is a powerful motivator. It's not a good motivator, but it's a powerful one. And if we can talk about it, bring it into the light, it does set us free when we can expose shame. So the next thing that I want us to do this week, I want to talk to you a little bit about story work and narrative trauma care. I learned about this from Dan Allender and the Allender Center and Adam Young. And if you have never listened to any of their podcasts, highly recommend them. They do have a lot of great insights. And but the first step in beginning to open the door to the trauma of our childhood is to begin. I'd like you to pull out a sheet of paper and write down. You can write it in a timeline form or in a bullet form, but I want you to just write the title of 10 different things that happened to you. Maybe the 10 most painful events of your childhood. And, when I think about trauma and the things that have happened to us, it's important to recognize that we don't get to categorize and compare trauma to somebody else, right? Like you might say, nothing ever traumatizing happened to me. It's not true. Doesn't matter if I've ever met you, I can tell you traumatizing things, difficult and painful things have happened to you. And especially if you struggle with addiction, don't try to tell me that you haven't suffered something traumatic in your life. And so for some people, they can have huge traumas, right? Some people call them big T traumas. They saw a murder, they were beaten, they were whatever, right? Like they were sexually assaulted. Okay. A lot of times it's easy for us to categorize that as, wow, those are traumatic things. There's also what a lot of people call small T traumas. And those are the little cuts, the unkind words that somebody said, the lack of presence where a parent wasn't near. And so all of those are on a continuum, and all of those have impact. So please don't feel bad if one of your biggest things is, my dad didn't show up to my game, or my mom said this to me, or my uncle said that. Those can all be very traumatic events. So, and we're not here to compare his trauma with her trauma or any of that kind of stuff. This is stuff that's impactful for you. And so as you think about shame, even, were there some shameful events that happened in your past? And I'm thinking, I'm talking about from 0 to 18, we don't need to talk about your adulthood. I want to first focus on your childhood, especially before you were 10 or 12 years old. Those are some really key areas. And we can also talk a little bit later too, but as you think about it, as you process it, I want you to write those 10 things down and begin to prepare. Eventually we're going to have you write some stories, but I wanted you to go ahead and write those 10 most painful parts of your childhood down. So there you go. There's your assignment this week. Dive into shame. Think about shame. You're like, thanks, John. Yeah, let's go for shame. Yeah. But the reality is, it does feel like dirty work. It does feel stressful. It does feel painful even to think about those memories, right? But it is in digging down. It is in opening up these wounds that we can finally find healing. Because just like I think of shame and I think of our stories of pain are often like a splinter deep inside of our skin. And that splinter has to be dug out in order for us to heal. And it's not fun to dig a splinter out. Often it's very painful to dig at it. But whether you're a parent or if a parent comes along and digs that out, that parent is not popular, right? That parent is, maybe that child feels like that parent is an enemy for a little while because they've dug on their skin and caused a great deal more pain. But in reality, that parent is a parent that really cares and that has been willing to go deep and into those painful places with the child. So I want to be that guide in your life as well, that somebody who can inspire you, hopefully, to go into those deep and painful places, to find process, to find healing, to acknowledge the pain and bring the healing balm to those places so that we can heal and so that we can remove those parts of shame that want to keep us bound. So with that ends our session today. But I will look forward to being together with you again soon. Take care.